What does a woman do when she's been underestimated her entire life? When her brilliance has been dismissed as a hobby and her loyalty has been treated as a given? You're about to hear the story of Alara Hayes, a woman who sat in a 40th floor boardroom surrounded by lawyers ready to pick her life apart. They watched her as she signed the papers, noting her calm, steady hand. Her husband thought he was getting away with everything. He thought she was broken. He had no idea that her signature wasn't an act of surrender. It was the pulling of a trigger. Because that very night, Alara Hayes flew off in a billionaire's private jet, leaving behind nothing but the smoking ruins of a life that was never truly hers. The chandeliers in the penthouse foyer were baccarat, a gift from Marcus's father, and Alara Hayes had always privately thought them ostentatious. Tonight they seemed to drip with a particular mocking brilliance, casting splintered light on the 38 guests streaming in. This was the night of the Thorn Capital Annual Foundation benefit, a name that implied institutional significance. In reality, it was Marcus's yearly command performance, a $2,000 a head party in his own home to fund a foundation that bore his name, but was run entirely and unpaid by his wife. Alara herself was a vision of curated perfection in a midnight blue Carolina Herrera gown. Her dark hair was swept into a chignon so precise it could have been drawn by a compass. She smiled, her lips the exact shade of a neutral, inoffensive rose. She was the perfect hostess. She was the perfect wife. "Ellie, darling," Marcus boomed his voice, a full production broadcast. He was handsome in the way of a man who spent a fortune to look rugged and effortless. He wore a custom Tom Ford suit, but his tie was artfully loosened, his cuffs undone. He was the maverick financier. "Senator Harrison, you know my brilliant Ellie. She does all this, you know. I just write the checks." He kissed her a dry, proprietary peck on the cheek that was pure theater. Alara smiled at the senator. "We're just so glad you could be here. The initiative for the children's literacy program is very close to my heart." "You're an angel, Alara. A goddamned angel." The senator slurred slightly, already deep into the vintage Dom Perignon. Alara moved through the crowd, a symphony of air kisses, murmured compliments on a new pair of Graf earrings and gentle steering hands toward the silent auction items. She had curated these items herself a week at a private villa in Lake Como, a walk-on role in an off-Broadway play, a private dinner cooked by Jean-Georges von Gerichten. She knew down to the dollar what each of her husband's powerful, insecure friends would be willing to pay to outbid the others. She was brilliant, and no one in this room knew it. To them she was Alara Thorne, the lovely, quiet, Stanford-educated art history major who had landed Marcus. They had no idea that when Marcus panicked over a hostile market, it was her quiet analysis of behavioral economics that calmed him. They didn't know that the killer closing line in his last keynote speech was one she had written plucked from her thesis on Renaissance patronage. She saw him across the room by the floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over Central Park. Marcus was laughing, a hand pressed to the small of a woman's back. The woman was not a guest. It was Tiffany, the new 24-year-old junior marketing associate at Thorn Capital. She was poured into a red Hervé Léger dress that left nothing to the imagination, and her laughter was loud, a high-pitched, girlish shriek. Alara watched her expression as placid as the glass of still water in her hand. Marcus's hand was too low. It was on the curve of her there. It was brazen. It was arrogant. It was, Alara realized with a sudden glacial clarity, the end. This wasn't a suspicion. She had known in the abstract way one knows the weather is changing that Marcus's attention was wandering. But this was different. This was a public, humiliating declaration of his power. He could do this in her home, at her event, and know that she would do nothing. She was the perfect, calm, supportive wife. She was furniture. A cold, sharp focus settled over her. The clinking glasses, the drone of conversations about St. Bart's and interest rates, it all faded into a dull roar. She wasn't devastated. She wasn't angry. She felt for the first time in years utterly and completely awake. She slipped away from the party, gliding down the marble hallway to Marcus's private study. The room was his sanctuary, mahogany leather, a faint smell of expensive scotch. She didn't turn on the lights. She walked to his massive, gleaming desk. His personal laptop was open. He was careless. Why wouldn't he be? Ilara never came in here. She didn't need a password. She knew them all. His was Thorn Capital God 1. Her own on her simple MacBook was a complex 20-character alphanumeric string. She opened his email. It was disgustingly easy. A folder labeled TIFF. It wasn't just flirtations. It was meticulous. Hotel reservations. The new Amman, New York under a false name. Receipts from a private jeweler. A Gmail calendar shared with Tiffany planning a birthday trip to Necker Island. A trip Ilara had originally planned for their anniversary, but which Marcus had regretfully canceled due to a board emergency. But it was the last email that held her gaze. It was a draft sent to his personal lawyer, Harrison Wilcox. The subject line was Asset Restructuring, Personal. She read it, and then she read it again. He was moving assets. Their assets. He was creating a new firewalled LLC. He was meticulously planning to leave her, but he wasn't just planning to leave her. He was planning to ruin her. The plan was to saddle their joint accounts and her personal holdings with all his recent highly leveraged and deeply risky personal trades. He would declare the business insolvent, transfer the good assets to the new LLC, and leave her with the apartment which she now saw was mortgaged to the hilt and a mountain of debt. He would paint himself as the victim of a bad market and her as the high-maintenance wife he could no longer afford. He was going to leave her with nothing. Ilara stood in the dark, the blue light of the monitor painting her face. She closed the laptop. She didn't wipe a single key. She walked back to the party, her spine straight. She found Marcus by the bar. He grabbed her hand. "There you are, I was worried. Listen, everyone, a toast." He raised his glass. "To my beautiful, brilliant wife, Ilara, the woman who makes it all possible. I'd be nothing without her." The crowd cheered. "To Ilara." Ilara raised her own glass, her eyes meeting his over the rim. She smiled a genuine, warm, and utterly terrifying smile. "To us, darling," she said. He thought he was a god. He had no idea he was standing in a cage she had just locked. The first call she would make in the morning would not be to a divorce lawyer. It would be to a man Marcus didn't even know existed. A man who collected art companies and, most of all, secrets. The name Nikolai Volkov was not one you'd hear at Marcus Thorne's parties. Volkov was a different species of predator. While Marcus and his cohort conspicuously consumed their Patek Philippe watches, their Hamptons shares, their boisterous charity galas, Volkov moved in silence. He was a ghost, a first-generation tech billionaire who had emerged from the post-Soviet wreckage with a mind like a steel trap and a rumored $40 billion in assets. He didn't own a sports team. He didn't have a public-use super yacht. He collected two things: distressed technology assets and forgotten art. Ilara had met him 4 years ago on a rainy Tuesday in Chelsea. It was a rare day she had taken for herself, a spa day, according to her shared calendar with Marcus. In reality, she had fled to the small academic galleries that were her true passion. She was standing in the back room of a tiny, struggling gallery looking at a painting that wasn't even on display. It was a small, dark canvas by a forgotten 17th-century Dutch painter, a contemporary of Vermeer named Clara Peters, who had been erased by history as female artists so often were. Ilara was mesmerized. In the reflection of a silver ewer, the artist had painted a tiny, almost invisible self-portrait. "She's showing you that she was there?" Ilara murmured to herself, leaning in. "She's not just an object. She's the creator. It's a statement of authorship disguised as a reflection. Most people see a fruit bowl." The voice was deep with the slightest trace of a Russian accent. It startled her. She turned. A man was standing in the doorway observing her. He was not handsome in the way Marcus was. He was tall, severe, with sharp cheekbones and eyes so pale they were almost colorless. He wore a simple, brutally expensive-looking black sweater and dark trousers. He looked like a monk who had just executed a hostile takeover. "Most people aren't looking," Elara replied, turning back to the painting. She felt strangely no need to be polite. "And you are?" he asked. "I'm looking." "You're Elara Thorne," he stated. It wasn't a question. "Wife of Marcus Thorne, Thorne Capital." Elara's spine stiffened. She turned to face him fully. "And you have me at a disadvantage." "Nikolai Volkov." He said the name as if it were a weather report. Elara recognized it, of course. She was married to a finance man. She read the journal. This was the man who had famously bought a rival's company just to liquidate it, claiming it was intellectually inefficient. "Mr. Volkov, I'm surprised to see you here. This gallery isn't exactly high profile." "High profile art is for museums and fools," he said, walking to stand beside her. He stared at the Peters. "Why do you like it?" "I don't like it. I respect it." The artist Clara Peters. She was painting these intricate pronk-still-even showy still lifes for male patrons, but she was hiding herself in plain sight. In the reflection on that cup on the pewter on the glass. She was signing her work over and over in a world that didn't want to see a woman's signature. She was brilliant, and she was forced to be subtle. Nikolai was silent for a long moment. He didn't look at Elara. He looked at the painting. "You see the subtlety. Everyone else sees the silver cup. What did you say your degree was in?" "Art history with a focus on the Dutch Golden Age." "And now you host benefits." The words landed like a slap. "I have a very full life, Mr. Volkov." "Do you?" He finally turned those pale, penetrating eyes on her. "Or do you have a full schedule? They are not the same thing." He tapped the painting. "The gallery owner is desperate. He's asking $50,000. It's worth 10 times that. The provenance is messy, but it's real. Your husband, he would call this a bad investment. He would be wrong." "My husband's business is his own," Elara said stiffly. "No, it's not." Volkov said, a flicker of a smile playing on his thin lips. "It's yours, too. You just don't get a share. I read the quarterly reports from Thorne Capital. They're bombastic, full of swagger. But the analysis on emerging markets, it's shallow, except for one report 3 years ago. On Brazilian art as a soft asset. It was brilliant. It was tight, predictive, and based on cultural, not just financial metrics. He never published another one like it. I always wondered who really wrote it." Elara felt a flush creep up her neck. It was her thesis paper repurposed. Marcus had borrowed it for a newsletter. "You're mistaken," she said. Volkov shrugged. "Perhaps." He turned to the gallery owner, who was hovering nervously. "I'll take the Peters, and I will pay you $100,000 for it on the condition that you tell no one I was here." He handed the man a black card. He then turned back to Elara. He pulled a different card from his wallet. It was plain, heavy gray cardstock with only a name and a 10-digit number. No email, no title. "You are like this painting, Ms. Hayes. You are a hidden signature in another man's work." Elara looked at the card but didn't take it. "Your husband is a small man obsessed with large things," Volkov continued, his voice low. "He will inevitably overreach. He will mistake your patience for obedience. He will mistake your silence for ignorance. And one day you will find yourself in a position where your subtlety is no longer enough. You will need a different kind of asset." He placed the card on a small table beside her. "I am always looking for talent, Ms. Hayes. Not for my walls, for my world. When his becomes too small for you, call me. I am a much better patron than he is." He walked out of the gallery without another word. Elara had taken the card. She had gone home, her hands shaking not from fear, but from recognition. She had hidden the card in the back of an old hollowed-out art history textbook. Baroque and post-Baroque, the age of spectacle. She hadn't looked at it in 4 years. Until now. After the party, the guests finally gone, the staff cleaning, and Marcus passed out in their bed, smelling of scotch and Tiffany's cheap, cloying perfume. Elara sat in her own bathroom on the cold marble floor. She retrieved the card. She looked at the number. She wasn't running to a billionaire to save her. A billionaire was a resource. A weapon. Nikolai Volkov wasn't a patron. He was an investor. And she finally realized, the most undervalued asset in New York City. She picked up her phone. She would not call. Not yet. First, she would build her case. She would gather her data. She would, as he had said, see the subtlety everyone else missed. She would map the entire financial and social architecture of Marcus Thorne's life, and then she would present her findings to the one man in the world who would know exactly how to leverage them. She was done being a reflection. It was time to be the author. The 3 weeks between the night of the party and the signing were the most intensely alive Elara had ever felt. The fog of her polite, suppressed life had burned away, leaving a sharp, crystalline clarity. While Marcus slept, Elara worked. Her first move was not to call Volkov. It was to call a woman named Ms. DeWitt, a forensic accountant she'd once seen speak on a panel about dark money in the art world. Elara had pretended to be a journalist from a small academic journal to get a 15-minute meeting. DeWitt, a woman with zero makeup and a gaze that could etch glass, had seen through the ruse in 30 seconds. "You're not a reporter, you're a client. Or you will be. Who's the husband?" Elara had at the time been frightened by her own audacity and had demurred. Now she called DeWitt's office. "I'd like to retain Ms. DeWitt's services. My name is Elara Hayes. The target is Marcus Thorne, Thorne Capital." There was a pause on the line. "Ms. DeWitt can see you. Thursday, 9 a.m. The meeting was in a bland, anonymous building in the financial district. Ms. DeWitt's office was not an office. It was a secure data room. "You have 60 minutes. Go," DeWitt said, gesturing to a chair. Elara didn't sit. She laid out her case. She had spent a week creating a full cross-referenced dossier. She had Marcus's asset restructuring email. She had the secret Amex black statements which she'd gotten by calling and impersonating his flustered new assistant. She had a list of the shell corporations he was using. He thought he was clever using art-based names like Andromeda LLC and Orion Holdings, a little joke between them from their honeymoon in Greece. It never occurred to him she would remember. She had mapped out the high-risk leverage he was playing with the exact properties he had used as collateral. She had even, with a sickening lurch, found the file for the promise bracelet from Harry Winston, a $75,000 gift to Tiffany billed to a joint account as consulting fees. DeWitt listened, her face impassive. She scrolled through the files Elara had brought on a secure encrypted drive. "He's arrogant," DeWitt said, "and sloppy. He's mixing personal and business using joint assets to secure non-liquid high-risk ventures. He's planning to declare personal bankruptcy on the joint assets while the corporate entity survives under a new name. You'll be left holding the bag. A very large, very empty bag." "I know," Elara said. "He's also, I suspect, committing wire fraud." DeWitt's eyebrow shot up. "Suspect? He has a major deal he's trying to close. The Andromeda deal. He's wooing a consortium of Japanese investors. But his numbers are inflated. He's projecting revenue based on assets he doesn't actually own yet. He's using the potential value of my family's art collection, which is currently on loan to the Met, as collateral in his soft assets prospectus." "Is your name on that collection?" "My maiden name, yes. It's held in a trust my grandfather started. Marcus is a co-trustee, but he doesn't have the right to leverage it. Not without my signature." "Has he tried?" Elara pulled out another file. A letter of intent, with a forged signature. Her signature. Only it was wrong. He had copied the signature she used on thank-you notes, a looping-friendly Elara Thorne. Her legal signature, E.M. Hayes, was a different thing entirely. A small, sharp, unreadable mark. DeWitt finally smiled. It was not a nice smile. He's not a wolf. He's a puppy, but a dangerous one. We can destroy him in court. It will take 2 years, cost you 7 figures, and be all over page 6. I don't want to destroy him in court, Alara said, her voice quiet. I don't have 2 years, and I don't care about the money I'm owed from the marriage. I care about what he's stealing. What do you want, Ms. Hayes? I want leverage. I want a clean, quiet, and very, very fast exit. And I want to ensure he cannot touch my family's trust ever again. I want him contained. DeWitt nodded. Containment. That's a different fee structure. We can't just react. We have to act. We need to get him to violate a court order. We'll need to set a trap. I already have one in mind, Alara said. But I need a partner, someone who can apply pressure from the outside, someone he won't see coming. That afternoon, Alara finally used the gray card. She sent a single text message, Clara Peters. The reply was instantaneous. I've been waiting for your call, Ms. Hayes. My car will be at your location in 5 minutes. She realized, already being tracked. The thought didn't scare her. It liberated her. The meeting was not in a high-rise. It was in a private, soundproofed room at the Frick Collection, which Volkov had apparently rented out for the evening. He was standing in front of a Holbein, a portrait of a stern, powerful man. Sir Thomas More, Volkov said, not turning. A man of principle. He lost his head. And Holbein painted him, Alara said, and his painting outlived the king who killed him. The art endures. Volkov finally turned. You're ready. I am. She didn't give him the emotional speech. She didn't talk about Tiffany or the betrayal or the party. She gave him the same presentation she gave DeWitt, but with a different focus. She didn't show him the wire fraud. She showed him the opportunity. Marcus is over-leveraged, she explained, pulling up data on a tablet. He's desperate for the Andromeda deal to close. He's courting the wrong investors. The Japanese consortium is famously risk-averse. They'll pull out the second they do real due diligence. But the CEO of Andromeda, a man named Kenji Tanaka, is a rival of yours, is he not, in the microprocessing space? Nikolai's pale eyes sharpened. He is not a rival. He is a nuisance. Tanaka is an avid art collector, specifically 19th century Japanese woodblock prints. He's been trying to acquire a complete set of Hokusai's 36 views of Mount Fuji for a decade. He's missing 3. And you know where they are, Volkov stated. I do. They're in a private collection in Belgium. The owner is an old, eccentric baron who hates modern technology. He's also a dear friend of my grandfather's. He won't sell to Tanaka, but he might loan them. To the right person. For the right exhibition. Volkov's smile was thin as a razor. Andromeda. A star system. You are offering me a star system. I'm offering you a weapon. You can use this. You can get a meeting with Tanaka. You can show him the prints. And in that meeting you can casually mention that your art advisor has deep concerns about the financial stability of his new partner Thorn Capital. You can show him this. She swiped the tablet. It was the forged signature. You show him that, and you show him the real mortgage on the penthouse. You show him the consulting fees to Tiffany. You show him that Marcus isn't a maverick. He's a desperate gambler who's forging his wife's name. Tanaka will be displeased. He will pull out. The Andromeda deal will collapse. Yes. And Marcus Thorne will be ruined. Yes. And you, Ms. Hayes, what do you get out of this revenge? Revenge is a luxury, Mr. Volkov. This is an extraction. I need 2 things. First, I need a new asset restructuring plan. One that protects my family's trust and my own premarital assets. Ms. DeWitt is handling the legal, but I need capital. I need someone to buy the debt on the penthouse silently. I need someone to hold the liens. So you can be the one to foreclose on him. You don't want to leave. You want to evict him. That's poetic. And expensive. I will sell you the Clara Peters. The real one. My grandfather bought it from the gallery in Brussels, not the one in Chelsea. The one you bought is an excellent 19th century copy. I've known for years. Volkov stared at her. Then he threw his head back and laughed. It was a harsh, surprising sound. A copy. He sold me a copy and you let me... You didn't ask me if it was real, Ilara said. You asked me why I liked it. My analysis stands. The copy is in its own way a statement of authorship. My God, he said, shaking his head. You are terrifying, Ms. Hayes. I'm just thorough. You buy the debt. You hold it until I give the signal. That's the first thing. And the second, Ilara took a deep breath. The night it's over, I need a ride. Volkov's eyes locked on hers. A ride. You once offered me a job. You said you were a patron. You're opening a new private museum in Singapore. Your acquisition fund is $500 million. But your curator is a mess. He's buying fakes and he's overpaying for name brands. He's buying bombastically. You've seen my acquisition reports. Volkov was incredulous. They were easy to find, if you know where to look. And you believe you can do better. Mr. Volkov, Ilara said, her voice dropping, I am the woman who spotted a fake Clara Peters in 5 minutes and tracked 3 Hokusai prints to a Belgian basement. I've been curating a $10 million household, a $50 million art trust, and a $100 million social calendar for a decade, all while managing an emotional black hole of an ego. Your museum will be simple. Nikolai Volkov stood in silence for a full minute, his gaze so intense it was almost physical. Teterboro Airport, he said finally. The night you sign. My pilot will have a flight plan. The call sign will be N44KV, a Gulfstream G700. It will take you to Singapore. Your starting salary is whatever you want it to be. The jet will be waiting. He held out his hand. Welcome to the payroll, Ms. Hayes. Ilara shook his hand. It was cold, firm, and as binding as any contract. Now, she said, let's talk about the divorce proceedings. I need them to be amicable. The transition from aggrieved wife to cold-blooded strategist was complete. Ilara's home, the vast Upper East Side penthouse, was no longer a cage. It was a theater of war, and she was its sole director. Her performance as Ellie, the sad, slightly lost but ultimately accommodating wife, began. Marcus, blinded by his own arrogance and the thrill of his new shallow affair, made it disgustingly easy. 2 days after her meeting with Volkov, Marcus finally confessed. He sat her down in their bone-white living room, the one she'd had featured in Architectural Digest, an accomplishment he'd claimed as his own. He was trying to look remorseful. Ellie, I don't know how to say this. He began, running a hand through his expensive hair. We've grown apart. Ilara had artfully applied a serum to her eyelashes that made them glisten as if she were holding back tears. She looked at him, her eyes wide with a perfectly calibrated mixture of shock and pain. Apart, Marcus. What are you talking about? I've met someone, he said, plunging ahead, relieved that she seemed to be crumbling. It just happened. Tiffany, from marketing. She's not you, Ellie. She's simple. And I need simple right now. Simple. The word hung in the air. Ilara felt a hysterical laugh bubble in her chest, but she crushed it, turning it into a small wounded gasp. Tiffany, she whispered, but she's a child. She's 24, and she sees me, Ellie. She's not, you know, complicated, like you. Complicated. That was her, the art history-loving, book-reading, quiet burden. I don't know what to say, she stammered, looking down at her hands. This was the moment. You don't have to say anything, he said, visibly relaxing. He was getting off easy. Look, I'll be fair. I'll be more than fair. I want you to have the apartment, of course, and I'll set up a very generous alimony. You won't have to worry about a thing. This was the hook. He was offering her the apartment. The deeply mortgaged, debt-riddled apartment. He was literally legally handing her the bag. The apartment, she said, her voice trembling. But this is our home. It can be your home, Ellie, he said magnanimously, now the benevolent king. I'll have my lawyer Harding draw up the papers. He'll be in touch with whoever you choose. Someone sensible. Not one of those uptown sharks, huh? Alara nodded mutely. I think I know someone. A man my father used to use. A Mr. Davies, very quiet, from a small firm. Marcus beamed. Perfect. See? We can be civilized about this. You're a class act, Ellie. Always have been. Mr. Davies, of course, was a phantom. The small firm was the secure data room run by Ms. DeWitt, who was now thanks to a quiet wire transfer from a Volkov-controlled entity on a massive retainer. The next 2 weeks were a masterclass in subtle sabotage. Alara became the most helpful, estranged wife in history. Marcus, darling, she'd call her voice breezy. I'm just clearing out some old files. There's a box here on Andromeda. It looks important. Shall I have it couriered to your office? He, in the middle of a frantic call, would snap, Yes, yes, whatever, just handle it. She would handle it by accidentally mislabeling the box, sending it not to his office but to the secure shredding facility she'd booked. She kept, of course, the real files, the ones with the forged signatures and inflated numbers. When he was screaming at his assistant about the missing box, Alara would call back, Oh, darling, I'm so sorry. I think I used the wrong label. I'm just so flustered. I'm all over the place. Let me see if I can find the receipt. He'd slam the phone down, muttering about her incompetence. He never suspected malice. He only saw the complicated, flustered woman he was so wisely shedding. Then there was the social side. Marcus, I know this is hard, but you can't just hide. She'd say, all gentle concern. The foundation benefit it raised so much. We have to show the board we're still a united front, just for a little while, for the sake of the foundation. He'd agree, eager to keep up appearances until his new company was launched. So Alara would arrange small, intimate dinners. She'd invite a key board member, and accidentally invite Tiffany too. Oh, Tiffany! Alara would say, all breathless surprise as the girl showed up in a dress that was more of a suggestion. Marcus, you didn't tell me you were bringing a guest. How wonderful. Please sit. And Alara would watch with a sad, gentle smile as Tiffany would get drunk on the expensive wine, mispronounce the board member's name, and talk about her TikTok strategy. Alara would see the board member's eyes narrow, see him look at Marcus with a new dawning contempt. Alara wasn't just leaking information, she was leaking image. She was letting Marcus's own poor taste and arrogance do the work for him. Meanwhile, the real work was happening in silence. Nikolai Volkov, true to his word, had moved. He'd had a chance encounter with Kenji Tanaka at an exclusive art auction in Geneva. He hadn't mentioned the woodblock prints. Not yet. He had simply listened. He listened to Tanaka complain about the cowboys in American finance. Then Volkov's team, armed with Alara's and DeWitt's data, did what they did best: they acquired. Quietly, through a series of shell companies based in Delaware and the Cayman Islands, they bought the debt on the Thorne penthouse. They bought the debt on Marcus's prized Aston Martin. They bought the debt on his personal line of credit at his own firm. In 1 week, Nikolai Volkov became Marcus Thorne's single biggest and completely invisible creditor. Marcus, busy planning his new life with Tiffany, saw only the amicable divorce papers being drawn up by Alara's sensible lawyer. The papers were a masterpiece of misdirection. They focused entirely on the alimony, which Alara kept tearfully trying to refuse, and the splitting of the personal effects, the art, the furniture. Marcus, eager to seem generous and knowing the furniture was all leased and the art was mostly hers, agreed to every sentimental request. He agreed in writing that the full and final settlement was contingent on her receiving the apartment free and clear of his name, but fully saddled with its attachments. He thought he was giving her a $20 million asset. He had no idea he was signing her name onto a $30 million anchor. The final piece of the con was the asset freeze. DeWitt's sensible lawyer, Mr. Davies, filed a standard boring motion, a mutual asset freeze to protect both parties during the proceedings. Marcus, Alara had whispered, crying on the phone, my lawyer is insisting. He says it's just procedure. Please just sign it. I want this to be kind. I don't want to fight. Marcus, rolling his eyes at Tiffany, who was painting her toenails on his sofa, signed. Yeah, fine, Ellie. Whatever your guy wants. Just get it done. The trap was set. The ink was on the paper, a binding legal agreement, and Alara knew from watching his secret bank transfers for weeks that Marcus was pathologically incapable of not moving money. He was a shark. He had to keep swimming. She just had to wait. It took 4 days. On a Tuesday at 3:15 p.m., Ms. DeWitt's system pinged. A wire transfer. $1.5 million. Marcus was moving it from a joint account frozen to a new secret offshore account in Tiffany's name, very much not frozen. He was violating the court order. He was in legal terms completely and utterly screwed. Ms. DeWitt called Alara. We have him. Contempt of court. Wire fraud. Forgery. It's a full deck. We can arrest him. Right now. Alara was at the Met, standing in front of a Sargent painting. She looked at the woman in the portrait, her face pale and passive. No. Alara said, her voice clear and cold. No arrests. Not yet. Let him close the Andromeda deal. Let him get all his ducks in a row. I don't want to just catch him. I want to watch him fall. The signing is on Friday. We'll proceed as planned. She hung up. She had a nail appointment and then a final fitting. Not for a gown. For a suit. An armor of her own. The battle was over. All that was left was the execution. Friday, 10:00 a.m. The offices of Harrison Wilcox Marcus's lawyer were on the 40th floor of the Seagram building. They were a temple of masculine mid-century power, dark wood steel glass, and an oppressive moneyed silence. Marcus was already there, pacing by the window, looking down at Park Avenue. He looked incredible, Alara thought, with a detached anthropological curiosity. He was tanned from a business trip to Miami, a long weekend with Tiffany. He wore a razor-sharp Brioni suit, a vibrant blue tie, and on his wrist the Patek Philippe Nautilus she had given him for their 5th anniversary. He looked every inch the king of his world. He smiled when she walked in, a smile of pure, condescending relief. Ellie, you're on time. Fantastic. His lawyer, Harding, a large man with a florid face, stood and gave a curt nod. Mrs. Thorne. Alara was not Ellie. She was not Mrs. Thorne. She was a stranger. She had spent 2 hours that morning on her appearance. It was not a divorce look, no sad mousy bun, no revenge dress. It was a board meeting look. She wore a severe, immaculate, cream-colored pantsuit by Acris. Her hair was not in a chignon, but cut. It was a sharp, angular bob that framed her face. Her only jewelry was a pair of simple diamond studs. She carried a single, thin leather valise. She looked like she was there to acquire the building, not be partitioned out of it. Marcus, Mr. Harding, she said, her voice cool and neutral. She sat at the vast polished table. Where's your man? Harding asked, shuffling papers. Davies, is it? Ms. DeWitt will be joining us, Alara said. The name landed like a dropped stone. Harding's head snapped up. Excuse me. Marcus looked confused. Who? Harding knew exactly who. Diane DeWitt, the Vulture. That's your sensible lawyer, Ellie. What kind of game are you playing? It's Ms. Hayes, Alara said, and I'm not playing. The door opened and Ms. DeWitt entered, followed by 2 associates pulling wheeled briefcases. DeWitt was as always a vision in militant gray. She gave a sharp nod to Alara, ignored Harding completely, and sat. My client is ready to sign, DeWitt said, her voice like a file on steel. Let's see the papers. Harding, visibly sweating, slid the documents across the table. Marcus, sensing a shift in power, stopped pacing. What the hell is this, Alara? I thought we were being civilized. We are, Alara said, taking the pen offered to her. It was a cheap plastic Bic. She ignored it, retrieving her own from her valise. A sleek black Mont Blanc. I'm just being thorough. She read the papers. It was all there. The generous alimony. The transfer of the penthouse to her name. The mutual release from all other financial claims. She looked at DeWitt. DeWitt gave a single sharp nod. Alara uncapped the pen. Her hand was perfectly steady. She signed Alara M. Hayes on every line, a clean, sharp, definitive signature. Marcus let out a long, theatrical sigh of relief. He was done. He was free. "Well," he said, clapping his hands together. That. Ellie, I truly wish you the best. You'll be very comfortable, and I'll have my assistant arrange to have the rest of my things moved out by—" "That won't be necessary, Marcus," Alara said, capping her pen. She stood up. Ms. DeWitt stood with her. "My man, as you called him, Mr. Harding has a few documents for you." One of DeWitt's associates stepped forward and placed a thick-bound folder in front of Marcus, and a second one in front of Harding. "What is this?" Marcus said, laughing. "A countersuit. It's too late, Ellie, the ink is dry." "Those are the divorce papers, yes," Alara said. "This," she tapped the new folder, "is a notice of foreclosure." The blood drained from Marcus's face. "What? That's not possible. The bank loves me." "The bank sold your debt, Marcus," DeWitt interjected, her voice devoid of emotion, "to a private investment firm. My client, Ms. Hayes, happens to be the principal advisor to that firm. You've defaulted on 3 separate covenants: the penthouse, the car, and your personal credit line. They're calling the notes, all of them, effective 90 minutes ago." Marcus's hand was shaking. He couldn't open the folder. "You can't. That's my apartment." "It was never your apartment, Marcus," Alara said softly. "It was the bank's, and now it's mine, or my investors'. We haven't decided what to do with it yet." "You bitch!" he breathed, sinking into a chair. Harding, his face ashen, was flipping through his copy. "This is aggressive, DeWitt, but it's just money. We'll fight it. We'll declare bankruptcy." "You could," DeWitt said, "but you'll want to see Appendix B." Harding flipped. He stopped. His mouth opened. "That," DeWitt said, "is a printout of a wire transfer for $1.5 million, made on Tuesday at 3:15 p.m., from a frozen joint marital account to an unsecured offshore account in the name of Tiffany Renault. That's a direct violation of the court order your client signed. That's contempt of court. It's also given the source of the funds wire fraud. And," Alara said, stepping in, her voice clear and caring, "there's Appendix C." Marcus looked up, his eyes wide with terror. "The Andromeda deal," Alara said. "The one you were so sure about. The one you were building your new life on. You forged my signature, Marcus. On a loan prospectus. You tried to leverage my family's trust." "It's just a draft," he stammered. "A projection." "A projection you sent to Kenji Tanaka," Alara said. "Pity. I happened to be having dinner with Mr. Tanaka last night. He was in town for an art exhibition." This was, Alara thought, the most beautiful lie she'd ever told. The meeting was in Geneva, but last night had a better, more brutal ring to it. "Mr. Tanaka was very interested in the forgery," she continued. "He was also interested to learn that your entire company is one big, leveraged, bankrupt, and all but name house of cards. He found your projections optimistic. He pulled out an hour ago. Your Japanese consortium is gone." Marcus made a small choking sound. He wasn't a king. He wasn't even a puppy. He was just a man. A small, terrified man in an expensive suit. "You're ruined," he whispered, looking at her as if for the first time. "This ruins me. We were married. How could you—" Alara picked up her valise. She walked to the door. She paused, her hand on the handle. "You said it yourself, Marcus," she said, looking back at him. His face was a mask of utter devastation. "You said you'd be nothing without me." She opened the door. "You're right. That was easy." She walked out into the hallway, her heels clicking on the marble. Ms. DeWitt followed. "The car is waiting, Ms. Hayes," DeWitt said. "Thank you, Diane," Alara said. "Send me the final bill." "There is no bill," DeWitt said. "Mr. Volkov took care of it. He called it an acquisition fee. Good luck in Singapore." Alara nodded. She didn't look back. She didn't smile. She didn't cry. She just walked, calmly. The elevator ride down from the 40th floor was silent. Alara stood at the back, feeling the 100-pound weight of Marcus's ego, his lies, and his expectations evaporate. She realized, just Alara, a feeling she hadn't known since she was 21. The lobby of the Seagram building was bustling. Alara had always felt invisible here, a wife on the arm of a real player. Today she was the one with the purpose. She had just closed the biggest deal of her life. She pushed through the revolving doors onto Park Avenue. A black, unmarked Mercedes Maybach was idling at the curb. A man in a dark suit opened the rear door. Alara slid in the door, closing with a silent, pressurized thunk that sealed off the city. "Ms. Hayes," a voice said. A woman sat opposite her, young, with a severe black bob and an earpiece. "I am Zoya, Mr. Volkov's executive liaison. Your transport to Teterboro is confirmed." "It's a pleasure to meet you, Zoya," Alara said. Zoya nodded. "Mr. Volkov is on video. He's in Tokyo." She tapped her iPad. Nikolai Volkov's face appeared in a room of paper screens. "It is done," he asked. "It is done," Alara confirmed. "Marcus, broken." A rare thin smile touched Volkov's lips. "Good." Tanaka was appreciative. "By tomorrow your ex-husband will be a pariah. Zoya has your new credentials. Alara Hayes is a good, strong name. It's the one that will be on the museum wing." "Alara Hayes is fine," she said. "Good. The jet is waiting. Call sign N44KV. I've had your preferred champagne stocked. Billicart salmon. Am I correct?" Alara was stunned. "How did you—" "I am a good patron, Ms. Hayes. I pay attention." The screen went dark. Zoya handed Alara a slim carbon fiber briefcase. "Your new life, Ms. Hayes. Passport, credit cards, and a secure satellite phone. Your old phone, please." Alara looked at her buzzing iPhone. 18 missed calls. Marcus Thorne. She handed it to Zoya, who placed it in a metallic-lined bag to be disposed of. The Maybach left the city, crossing the George Washington Bridge. Alara looked back at the Manhattan skyline. It had never been her home. The car didn't go to the main terminal. It drove through a secure gate directly onto the tarmac. There, it was a sleek white and silver Gulfstream G700. "Have a pleasant flight, Ms. Hayes," Zoya said, opening the door. "Mr. Volkov expects your notes on the curator's brief by the time you land." Alara stepped onto the tarmac. A flight attendant waited at the top of the stairs. "Welcome, Ms. Hayes." Alara walked up the stairs, not looking back. The cabin was a minimalist apartment of cream leather and dark wood. On a polished bar, a single bottle of Billicart salmon rosé was chilling. Alara sat and poured a glass of champagne as the cabin door sealed. She felt the engine's rising power. Then the undeniable thrust as the G700 rocketed down the runway. The ground fell away. As the plane banked over the Atlantic, she saw the lights of New York, a carpet of discarded diamonds. A jewel box she had finally escaped. Her new phone buzzed. A text from Nikolai. "One last thing. Check the Society Send Down blog. Good night, Ms. Hayes." She opened the tablet. A new post was live. Live from Park Ave, not so mighty Marcus Thorne in meltdown. There was a video of Marcus in the Seagram lobby, his tie undone, screaming into his phone. "Find her, she can't do this." Next to it, a clip of Alara 20 minutes earlier walking calmly to the Maybach. Caption: "The king is dead. Long live the queen." Sources say Alara Hayes just pulled off the most legendary divorce in New York history. Where is she going? Stay tuned. Alara sipped her champagne. She was high above the clouds in the dark, silent peace of the stratosphere. She leaned her head back, closed her eyes, and for the first time in a decade, She was perfectly, absolutely, and exquisitely calm. 6 months later, the air in Singapore was heavy, warm, and smelled of frangipani and ozone. The grand opening of the Volkov Museum of Global Art was the single most talked about event in the art world. It was not a vanity project, it was a statement. The building itself was a marvel, and inside the collection was astonishing. It wasn't just the big names. A 17th-century Dutch still life, the real Clara Peters, was hung next to a hyper-modern digital piece by Rafik Anadol. It was a collection not about money but about conversation. It was intelligent, subversive, and in a word, Ilara. Ilara Hayes herself moved through the space not as a hostess but as a general. She wore a striking architectural gown, her eyes sharp and bright. She was not smiling. She was engaging. "The juxtaposition is daring," said a critic from the New York Times. "Putting the Hokusai prints in the digital influence wing. What's the thesis, Ms. Hayes?" "The thesis, Mr. Levy, is that Hokusai was a 19th-century data artist," Ilara said, her voice carrying. "He was obsessed with one image, one data point, Fuji, and he rendered it in 36 different ways, creating a data set. The same way this algorithm is rendering climate data. One is woodblock, the other is code. It's not daring, it's obvious." The critic stared, then slowly nodded, a look of profound respect on his face. "Obvious. Yes, of course." In a corner on a raised balcony, Nikolai Volkov watched. Zoya, his liaison, appeared at his side. "Sir, a news update from New York." She handed him a tablet. The headline was from the Wall Street Journal: Thorne Capital founder Marcus Thorne indicted on 12 counts of wire fraud, securities fraud, and perjury. The article detailed his spectacular, lightning-fast collapse. The forged signatures, the offshore accounts, it was all there. Mr. Thorne's ex-wife, Ms. Ilara Hayes, was unreachable for comment. "Unreachable?" Volkov mused, a small smile on his face. "He's facing 20 years, sir," Zoya said. "He's destitute. He can't even afford a decent lawyer. Harding dropped him. He's on a public defender." "A fitting end," Volkov said, handing the tablet back. His phone vibrated. A text from Ilara. "Tell the Sheikha I can't have dinner. The lighting on the 14th century scrolls is off by 2 degrees. I have to fix it." Volkov typed a reply. "She's the head of the Qatar Museums. She controls a $2 billion acquisition budget. Have dinner with her." Ilara's reply was instant. "I am the head of the Volkov Museum. My budget is sufficient. And the lighting is wrong." Volkov found himself laughing, a genuine, quiet laugh of appreciation. He typed one more message. "Very well. Fix the lighting. You are as always correct." He put the phone away. A young, ambitious reporter from Art Forum finally managed to get past his security. "Mr. Volkov, a quick question. Ms. Ilara Hayes. She came out of nowhere. No one had ever heard of her. How did you find her?" Nikolai Volkov took a sip of his water. He looked down at Ilara, who was now directing a technician, her face a mask of fierce intelligence. He turned to the reporter, his pale eyes unblinking. "I didn't find Ms. Hayes," he said, his voice cold and precise. "You didn't hear of her because you weren't listening. You were all looking at the fruit bowls. Ms. Hayes was always there. She was just waiting for the right light." And that's the story of Ilara Hayes. She didn't just get a divorce. She executed a takeover of her own life. She showed everyone who had ever dismissed her exactly what she was worth. But what do you think? Was Ilara's plan a masterpiece of justice or a cold-blooded act of revenge? What would you have done? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. This story was a massive one to tell, and if you enjoyed this journey, please show your support. Hit that like button so I know to make more content like this. Share this video with someone who loves a story of strategy and secrets. And most importantly, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel and ring the bell. You don't want to miss the next story we uncover. Thanks for listening.